Welcome back. Once Unreal has launched, you should see a screen like this. This is where you're going to work on your project. In the middle of the screen, this window, we can actually see our project that's being built, and it will be filled with some sample content as you've selected the first person project file. And if we want to have a play with our level, make sure that it's compiled, click on play, and that will put us into our level here. Now, Unreal Engine is very resource intensive on your system. You may find considerable slowdown when you try your levels out in here. The easiest way to optimize this is to go into settings, engine scalability settings, and we can set these to low, medium, high, epic, or to auto. Obviously on low, you're going to have the best frame rate, the least processing being done, but the lowest quality. I don't know how well you can see this on the video, but you can start to see pixelation at the edge of the objects here. When we want to end playing our level, we hit escape. So we're going to be working on a project from scratch here today. So the first thing we'd like to do is say File, make a new level, and we're going to choose the default level. The reason not to choose the empty level is the default level already comes with a player start position, already comes with the sky, and most importantly it comes with ambient lighting already set up. So let's choose our new level. There it is. Not a lot in it. As said before, you can see the sky. This little icon here marks where our player start is, and we have one floor tile. So I'm going to first of all save this. So File, Save. Let's give it a name, My First Map, or anything suitable. And that will now save separately. Something that will save you a lot of time in the long run when you're making Unreal projects is to go again into Settings, Project Settings, Maps and Modes, and from there we can choose our default map and our editor start map. Okay, we're going to change both of these to My First Map. If for any reason you now exit the project, you're loading it up later on to continue working on it, this will be the default map that loads up, rather than that map we saw a few moments ago full of starter content. There's no need to click Save, OK or Apply here, we simply close it down and it will remember our settings. So let's have a look at making our first class. Well, firstly, what is a class? A class is a set of instructions that enables us to make objects. Now, this will get clearer as we go further along. If we look up here in the World Outliner, this list of things up here in our editor, we can see the atmospheric fog, the floor. As I click on there, you'll see this floor tile lights up. As I click on Player Start, it highlights the icon that shows where my player is going to start. Now, if I play, my player starts, there's the floor tile. These are all things that exist within my game when I start it up that you can see that are within the game world. And these are objects. So how does the computer know how to make an object? For example, what does player start mean? How big should the floor tile be? Where is the floor tile? All of these characteristics. Well, these are made up from a class. So we're going to have a go first of all, clicking on C++ classes down here. I'm going to right click in my content browser, and the content browser is where I find all my different types of class. We're going to be looking first of all at C++ classes today, and then at Blueprint classes. So I'm going to make a new C++ class. We're going to select actor. I will be going into more detail explaining this in future videos, but for now you just need to know that actor is what we wish to select. Click next. We're going to give this a name. I'm going to call this floor tile, and because it's a class, I've started it with a capital letter there. We've got capital F floor tile, and create the class. Now, if Visual Studio hasn't already loaded up when you started the project, as soon as it's finished creating this class, you should see Visual Studio load up. Once this is loaded up, here's Visual Studio, and let's have a look at what we've got. Well, we've made one object so far, but what you may immediately notice is we actually have two files here. We have a header file and we have a CPP file. The CPP file is where all that information, all those instructions we were talking about exist. This is where we tell the class what it's going to do, how it's going to go about creating objects. The header tells us about all the attributes that may exist. So for example, if it's going to have a variable called height to control how high the object is going to be, within the header I'm going to tell it that there is a variable, variable called height. That's it. There may also be a variable called width. And I declare my variables here to use later on. Now at the moment I don't want these, so I'm going to delete them. And again, we'll be looking more at headers as we go through the course. So here within the CPP file is where I give all of its instructions. Now I'd just like to take a moment to talk you around Visual Studio. This is our source code editor. This is where we write the actual code. What you see in here is the code, the instructions contained within the class. Anything starting with // and that is highlighted in green here, is commentary. Commentary isn't actually code. This is something that the person writing the code, or here Unreal has added a few comments in for us when we first created the class, explaining what the class does. So down here, anything within this little function here is going to happen when the game starts or when the actor is spawned. So let's have a look what we can do in here. Let's set a variable called x to be equal to 100. At the moment x doesn't do anything, and again hopefully what you'll notice is that the x has got underlined in red. This is a function called IntelliSense that exists within Visual Studio, and it works a lot like a spell checker in a word processor, for example Microsoft Word. It's looking for obvious errors and trying to bring those to my attention. So what's the problem with this code? Well, this code is actually written perfectly fine. There's no problem with saying that the variable x is equal to 100. This is highlighted in red at the moment because I don't have a variable called x. This is what it's saying. Identify x is undefined. And if for a moment I jump back to Unreal and try and compile this, it will take a few moments and then it will fail to compile and show me some errors. Just going to pause a moment whilst that happens. So we can see down here in the bottom right that the compiler's failed. We click on show log and this will tell us all the problems that we've got. So let's look here for our error. Error x, undeclared identifier. What does this mean? We've never actually told our class that there is a variable called x. This is what we were talking about earlier. It needs to happen in the header file. So I'm going to go to my header file. I'm going to tell it that there is an integer called x. And then hopefully now, take a few seconds to catch up, but it will accept that this integer called x exists. If I compile this, it should usually take slightly less time when it compiles successfully than when it's trying to identify errors, but it should compile and tell me that that has been successful. So we can see again down in the bottom right, compile complete. That's compiled successfully. That means that the computer can understand all the code we've written, that there aren't any problems with it. So if there are issues with your code, remember there are a few ways to find this out, a few ways to see it. Firstly, IntelliSense should pick it up and underline in red anywhere where there are problems with the code. And then secondly, it will fail to compile. And if you haven't successfully compiled the code, that code will not run when you attempt to play the game. So, if you followed that, you've successfully created your first C++ class, and that will exist down here within C++ classes in the content browser. That's important to remember. If you're ever looking for a class, it's going to be in the content browser. Alright, so in the next step of this, we're going to have a look at making a blueprint class and why we would want to make a blueprint class when we already have